Welcome to another great story with your host, Nick Sandino. Brought to you by The Village Christian Church. Do you know any great stories? We sure do. And we can never find enough time on a Sunday morning to tell them all. Here at Another Great Story, we tell the truth about where life change, life growth, and life purpose meets our everyday life, with the hope that you might experience God in your story.
Welcome back to Another Great Story. I'm your host, Nick Sandino. Joining me today from our Coal City campus is a good friend, Kyle White. I want you to sit back and relax and get to know Kyle a little bit today on Another Great Story. So, Kyle, you're actually a listener of the show.
Yes.
You just got notified while we were sitting here that another episode just dropped.
I did, yes. I'm looking forward to listening to it after we're done.
Do you know Tim at all?
I don't.
No? Yeah, you'll enjoy listening to it then if you've never heard Tim's story. He's just a great guy, just been around a while. So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. First of all, it's an honor to be here. My name is Kyle White. I am 35 years old. I attend the Coal City campus. I've lived in Braidwood my entire life, so it's very nice having a campus right next to where I grew up. I have a wife, Courtney. We've been together actually coming up on our 10-year wedding anniversary here in June. Been together for 17, kind of high school sweethearts. So
yeah,
great story on that end. And then we have two beautiful kids. Braden is 7 years old. He'll be 8 in the fall. And then we have my daughter, McKenna. She's 4. She'll be 5 in about 3 weeks. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster having young kids and figuring everything out. But it's been really good.
So Courtney was a Braidwood girl too?
No, funny enough. So I met Courtney through a good friend of mine, Kelsey, who's her cousin. I've gone to school my entire life with Kelsey. Courtney's originally from New Lenox. So, I'd been friends with Kelsey for a long time. Courtney, I didn't really know Courtney at all. I'd been introduced to her by Kelsey, just as they were at a get together, and I was like, hey, who's that girl? And, Kelsey, I think at the time was a little reluctant to introduce me, but, we joke about it now that, 17 years later, I think it worked out pretty well.
Right. So what year did you graduate Braidwood again?
I graduated in 2008.
Okay. 2008.
And you were Seneca, correct?
I was Seneca, but I graduated in 2003. So I was trying to figure, sometimes when I get over there to Coal City, like Rodney and I are close to the same age.
Okay.
And Galliardo is a year older than me. And so there was like some overlap on sports and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a funny thing when we've started these campuses, local. I mean, Seneca was the one that really hit different because you walked back into the town you had gone high school in. You know?
Absolutely.
So, but what was your history with the Village, or what's your history with faith? Like, how did you arrive at a relationship with Jesus that ended up in Coal City, that ended up where you're at today?
Yeah. So, when we were talking about Another Great Story, I didn't really think that my story was too interesting because I feel like I hear it in bits and pieces from different people, but, mine was, I grew up Catholic. I, went to CCD until I was in 8th grade, got confirmed. And then that's pretty much where it ended. I didn't grow up in an overly religious household. It was more so, my brother went to CCD. My mom went to a Catholic church and, Catholic school in Manhattan growing up. So I went to CCD, and I think for a lot of people, especially when you're, going into high school, when I didn't have that presence to do it, it was kind of easy to not focus on it.
Right.
And so for me, I really didn't have anything pulling me towards a church or Christ in a whole. I believed in him. I loved God. I understood that he was there, but it wasn't focusing on a relationship with him. So funny enough, the story between my wife and I is she grew up in a very religious household. Her dad, my father-in-law, was best friends with their pastor, Jeff Robinson. Courtney grew up in the church,
in New Lenox?
In New Lenox at Lincoln Way Christian Church.
Okay.
And so when we started dating, their rule was, for one, we dated inside their house for the first 6 months. We did not go anywhere. We did not do anything. It was under the guidance of her parents, and that's how it was. And it was also, if I wanted to see her on Sundays, I went to church.
Yeah.
And so I went to Lincoln Way Christian Church. And, you know, I look back on the time now, and I probably didn't appreciate it enough. You know, I think I was doing it as any probably 18-year-old kid was doing, like, oh, well, I want to see my girlfriend, I got to go.
Right.
The focus wasn't on, you know, building a relationship with Christ. And so, you know, we continued to go to Lincoln Way Christian Church. And then as Courtney and I both went to school, that kind of faded off. And then we moved to Braidwood, where we bought our first home. And we would go back every once in a while. But by that time, Jeff had actually moved to Missouri to be a pastor there. And then we were kind of in a kind of at a standstill of where we wanted to go. You know, Courtney was so used to a particular way of preaching.
Right.
And I didn't really have any. So
Yeah.
for me, it was like, it's all fine. You know, just find a guy that I like. And, you know, but I realized that wasn't actually the truth. And so we bounced around. So I have a really good friend of ours, Tyler and Ashley Speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tyler was a First Christian guy.
Yeah, it still is. So Wendy and
Okay.
Wendy and Stacy, his parents, you know, now they moved to Kentucky full time, but you know, Tyler grew up going to First Christian, and
I remember some of that overlap now.
yeah, and so they invited us to go
Right.
to First Christian, and so we did. We enjoyed it. Like Tim Henson, who oversees children's ministry there, was
Right.
awesome with our kids, and our kids really liked it. But I still wasn't bought in, and I say that jokingly because I would make every excuse as to, like, I don't want to drive 30 minutes to church.
Right.
You know, it wasn't a focus. You know, so we did that here and there for, you know, the first couple of years that Braden was born. And then it wasn't really until, you know, unfortunately, early 2020, my father-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And I was mad, you know?
Yeah.
I was mad because I was like, how can a man who I've never watched anybody serve the Lord better get such
cancer.
bad news?
Right.
You know, and that was actually my focus to start learning about Christ. Was, you know, I wanted an answer. I wanted, well, why would God do bad things to good people?
Yep.
You know, and I watched my mother-in-law, who, you know, was this just, you know, everything that you can think of a perfect Christian wife, you know, and,
Yeah.
you know, she actually brought my father-in-law to Christ, and, you know, by praying for him every single day and with small groups, and, you know, and it just completely changed his life, you know, 35 years ago. And, you know, I look back now, you know, as that was kind of the point that really catapulted me, you know, to learning more. And
So what's that look like when you say you want to start learning more? You're going to First Christian.
going to First Christian.
You just start. Were they closed during that time?
Yeah, so we were doing some online services, and I was making it a focus to, you know, listen to online services. And I was still kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out, though. You know, it wasn't an every week thing. My wife was. She was still, you know, every Sunday listening to online, wherever it may be. So my true journey really started right around the end of 2022, which is, you know, January of 2023 is when my father-in-law unfortunately lost his battle with cancer after a little over 2.5 years of fighting it. And, you know, it was the ability to watch him not be mad at God for what was going on.
That was going to be my question. What did he look like going through that?
A hero.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was no point of him ever wavering in his faith, you know, and so I looked at myself and I'm like, well, man, like, how can I be mad if he's not mad?
Mm.
You know, and then it was kind of a wake up call. It was like, I know that was something that, you know, Bob wanted me to be a good Christian man, you know, to my best of my ability. And, you know, that was really kind of my focus. So we did not go to the Village in Coal City. I'll kind of back up a little bit. So at that point, I still knew that I wanted to find our church home.
Yeah.
I knew that it wasn't First Christian, and it had nothing to do with anybody there. But it was more so like I wanted to find where I felt immediately at home.
Yeah.
With the people that I was around and everything like that. And I'd heard of the Village, and I had seen people sharing the Village is coming to Coal City.
Right.
I'm like, where at? And
yeah, I'm trying to even think of the timeline.
It's like it started being shared like December of 2022.
Yep.
To opening January of 2023. And so I'm like, where's this building going to go? And funny enough, I'm working out in the gym underneath of it.
Oh, yeah.
The entire time.
Right.
I don't know what's going on above me. Learned that that's where the Village is going to be. So we didn't go the first week. I believe we had a sick kid. And then we went the second week, and we've been going every week since. And,
really?
you know, for me, I looked at it as, you know, and I it's not embarrassing, so I can say it, but, you know, a lot of that has to do with Mike Strunga.
Sure.
You know, and, you know, we walked in unknowing anybody, you know, kids that were going to a new church, and Sarah Hurt comes right up, you know,
right.
and hugs us, you know, as if we were been there forever and we'd never been
Did
there.
you know Sarah before that?
Didn't.
Really?
We knew nobody. We knew the Gleiksners.
Uh-huh.
That was about it, you know, and, you know, so for us, it was an immediate, it was an immediate welcome. And
I feel so bad. I had not thought of the Gleiksners. They were such a mainstay here.
Yeah.
That I remember being bummed when they went to Coal City.
Yeah.
Like it's like a mixed bag of feelings, because you're so bummed to lose great people.
Yeah.
But you absolutely know that Coal City needs great people like that.
Yeah. And they, you know, they had the ability to move back home, you
Yes.
know, and put their kids, you know, into Braidwood School District where, you know, they had went. So
right.
it was cool. And they were like, yeah, you know, we go here. And, you know, for me, it was definitely a situation where, you know, we were maybe, you know, so we go to church. I think the very next week or maybe 2 weeks later, my father-in-law passes away.
Oh.
And, you know, we were kind of like, it was the right time for us to find the Village. And it was the right time for me to find Mike. You know, and I remember it was probably beginning of March. You know, Mike had sent me a text message and was like, hey, you know, Kristen and I would love to have you guys over for dinner. And I'm like, I've never had that anywhere I went to. Like, I've never had a pastor reach out and be like, we want to learn more about you. Like, please come over, get to know us. And for me, that was, you know, that was everything that I needed personally, because like I said, I was searching for a home. You know, Courtney was searching for something that she had a long time ago. So it was a breath of fresh air. And, so for about the first probably 6 months, we were going, you know, every Sunday, but we weren't doing everything that we are now, you know?
Yeah.
Until we had a Rooted class. And I was like, you know, I think that this would be a good idea. And Courtney was like, I really want to do it.
So tell the listener, like, what is Rooted?
Yeah. So Rooted is truly just an opportunity. It's a 10-week course with a small group that really dives into basically your relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, there's different tasks throughout the weeks that you do, whether it's, you know, fasting, whether it's giving back by, you know, serving somewhere. We did the food pantry as a group, you know, so that was really cool. You know, but it's a really good time we had a very small class. It was me and my wife, lady named Dawn, who goes to Coal City as well, and then Amy Tricano.
Oh yeah.
And then Mike Alva sat with us. We did not have the numbers yet,
right,
to really garner a lot of people, and but it was awesome. You know, it gave me an opportunity to really dive into the Word in a way that I hadn't outside of just reading the Bible. But it's like, no, I could actually read things and go through it and understand and how to apply it.
Yep.
You know, so for me, that was probably truly the turning point.
Yeah.
For me. And
was 10 weeks scary from the onset?
100%, because if you would have told me 5 years ago, Kyle, you're going to commit 10 weeks to the church doing anything,
Yeah.
I'd have been like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's not where my life has taken me. You know, I golf on the weekends. Like I don't go to church, you know, and,
Right.
but it, when I got done, 10 weeks wasn't enough.
Right. Yeah. So Rooted's a funny thing. Whenever you pitch it, whenever we talk about it from stage, that's the pushback is like, oh, am I going to be able to string together 10 Tuesdays in a row or whatever day it ends up falling on? And then when I would say it's something like 90% of people complete it, and 10 weeks was not the issue.
Yeah, no. I remember sitting here because we came here for the dinner.
Right.
You know, we
Celebration.
do the walk, the celebration walk and all of that. And I'm like, is there like a Rooted 2?
Right.
You know, like, is there something to like compound on top of this, you know? And, yeah, really, it was something where, you know, at first, yeah, I was like, there's no way we're going to make every one of these. Like, I'm like, we got 2 young kids. I'm making every excuse in the book. Like,
Right.
We have 2 young kids. We're not going to make it. And it's just, you know, we found a way to do it. And by the end, we both appreciated it. And I think it made Courtney and I grow in our faith together, not separate.
Oh, that's huge, isn't it?
Which was kind of a big thing. So yeah, we finished Rooted, and then Amy Tricano actually reached out to me, and she's like, hey, everyone serves.
Right.
You know, it's one of the key pillars, you know, everyone serves. And she's like, I think that you'd be really good as an usher, you know, welcoming people to the church. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like something fun, you know. And at the time we were still on our original side. And so it was like once every 5 weeks.
So in the build out, like you guys were in the first room.
Yeah.
That
yeah, just one door, one person.
I think it's like
standing
30
there.
by 40 room.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's just one person standing there, and she's like, you know, I'll schedule you like once every 5 weeks or whatever.
Yep.
I'm like, oh yeah, perfect. That works. Courtney was doing Kid Village at the time. And
were you guys 2 services?
yes. Yeah, we were still 2 services. Okay. So typically I would serve as an usher at 9 a.m.
Yep.
And then Courtney would serve Kids Village at 10:30 because we always wanted to go to church together.
Yeah.
We always wanted to go to service together. You know, and that was something that was important to us. And then I would take the kids home because they're like, wait, we staying here again? You know, like, so I would take them home, or my mother-in-law would, or my parents would. And, you know, so now fast forward, you know, March of last year, I got baptized on this very stage, or right over here.
Yeah, right over there.
And, you know, that was kind of, that was like the moment where I was like, this is for me,
Yeah.
you know? And I remember talking with Mike a lot, and, you know, continually being like, I don't know, you know, like I'm going to wait till I'm ready,
Yeah.
you know? And like finally one time Mike was like, ready for what? Like, he's like, I'm not like pushing you towards what you should do, but like, we're never perfect. Like
Right.
we're incomplete at all points of our life, you know?
Yep.
So he's like, if you're going to continue to wait, like you're never going to find
Yeah.
the time to do it, you know? And, so yeah, March 11th of last year, I got baptized, and it was the best decision I ever made in my entire life. And you know, it's funny, like I have watched baptisms now, you know, and I get emotional watching them, and I didn't before I got baptized because I didn't understand it. You know, I knew what it was, but it wasn't an emotional experience. And it's like, it's an emotional experience, and it's not even me anymore.
Right.
It's just knowing what that person is going to feel, you know, in their heart and their soul, you know, for eternity, you know. And
So tell me, you're a local guy to
Yeah.
where you go to church. So that means, I mean, I don't know how old you would have been last year. What, like
34.
34. So you had a lifetime of locals knowing who Kyle White was prior.
Yeah.
So what's that been like in your workplace? I don't even know what you do, I guess. I missed that. You were talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm in medical device sales.
Okay.
So currently right now I work for a company called Alcon. We sell contact lenses. Through work, my colleagues know me the same. You know, there's no real difference. I can definitely say on a personal side, I don't believe I've lost any friends over it, but I've got some friends who now go to church
Sure.
because of it.
It's like started planting seeds.
Yeah, so it was a situation where they could definitely tell a difference, and just how I act, things that I do, try to control things a little bit more. It's still a work in progress as it always
absolutely.
is. But it's funny. I have a good friend of mine, and we used to have a Sunday morning tea time, and that's no longer there.
Right.
So that's a big difference. And we changed it to Saturday. It's Saturday morning early. So,
right.
It's I've had a lot of support. I've had a lot of support for the changes that I've made in my life, and I know my wife. Like, I don't think that she could give you a number on how many times that she probably prayed for me over the last 17 years. To find God.
Yeah.
And my mother-in-law, and now it's cool. Like, my mom now goes to the Village,
right,
and they're serving, and my mom will even say, like, there was a seed. Unfortunately, not to put a downer, but I think that the death of my father-in-law actually changed a lot of people.
Yeah,
and I think that a lot of people that were close to him and maybe not religious, it sparked something in them.
Yeah,
to find God. To watch a man who had arguably the worst thing that you can have, in stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and
right,
just fight to the very end.
Right.
I think it's admirable, and there's no way somebody goes through that without having God on their side.
Yeah.
And so I think I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I think, for as weird as it sounds, it's like he died so I could be born, and it's, I know that that's what he wanted, regardless if it have to be him, it's just an interesting time, and how everything kind of came together.
Right.
It was within weeks, of a switch kind of flipping in me and being like, this is what I need to do. This is where I need to be.
Yeah. It's something. It's one thing to watch somebody follow Christ when there's when they're just running a race in an everyday, ordinary life. Like you're saying, like even at the workplace, like in our working relationship, yeah, they're seeing glimpses of something, but they're not really seeing a perseverance through that trial. But when you watch somebody faithful have to like live their faith out in action, it's amazing how many people's story correlates back to pain.
Yeah.
Like I went through this horrible, hard season, and God showed up. God was faithful, and God, whatever language you want to use, like knocked on the door of my heart, was after me. And it like the more of these stories that we do, I always correlate it back to my kids, and I wonder, you as a dad too, how you'd see this. I would give anything to prevent my children from pain, and at the same time, it's exactly where I grew. It's exactly where I saw my faith root. And so you have this, Nate used this language, like God's this great capitalist who always makes the most of every opportunity. And in a broken world, like to see his redemption, to see his faithfulness, to see somebody finish the race well, we don't get a lot of examples of that.
Yeah. Well, and I think the important part too, like with being a father or mother, for those listening, pain is inevitable.
Yeah.
So where you put your faith matters.
Yeah.
And how you apply it matters, because you can take a lot of different avenues when you're going through pain.
Yep.
And I think, having the ability to go through your pain or tragedy or whatever you're dealing with, but having God at the center of it and your faith being able to dictate that, I think is very important.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me as a father, that's what I'm trying to do with my kids. Is like, I know they're going to experience pain. I know my daughter's going to experience heartbreak. I know, I know all these things are going to happen. And, it's what can I do to best prepare them? And for a while, when I started going to the Village, I kind of used my kids as the excuse. It was like, I'm going so they know God.
Right.
Like it made it easier. Like when I would talk with people who maybe don't go to church, it's like, dude, like times are wild. Like I want my kids to be in a good surrounding spot.
Yeah.
You know, but it was like, for as much as I was doing it for them, I was doing it for me. But it was easier to pawn it off on saying,
sure,
hey, I'm doing this so that my kids are in a good spot.
Right.
So yeah, it's funny how, you know, you can kind of mix and match the way you're going to approach things. But I think ultimately, as long as you get to the finish line,
sure,
the way that you're looking, you know, is what matters the most.
What's it changed in your relationship with your wife?
Oh my gosh. I think, we, like any married couple, I mean, we still have our spats on things, but I think there's just an unwavering love, you know, and I think we've put more value and understanding that our relationship is more important than everything else, you know, and like how we show our kids how it is to be married,
right,
is going to do things that we're never even going to see, but will completely change the outlooks of their lives, you know. So for us, I think it really just solidified the love that we knew we had for each other, but I think being faith focused and having the same ideas of where we want to be in our faith, because that was for a long time, you know, and I've never really, I get a sense of how Courtney probably felt for a long time. Like, you know, I wasn't atheist or anything like that, but I definitely wasn't anywhere near following any word of the Bible.
Right.
And she's living it out. And I know that was probably incredibly hard for her.
Sure.
And like, you know, I think now it probably made things a little bit easier for her being on the same being on the same wavelength. And, you know, so I think I think it really, it drove us together. I mean, even more than we already have been over the last.
Yeah. Whenever I have to marry somebody and they're either, how would I word this? Like if you have somebody who's potentially, they want a pastor to marry them.
Yeah.
But relation with God is something that they would claim to want to have, but it's not the priority, right? And if I teach through like Ephesians 5 that, you know, like husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church, or submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. It's the only relationship that we see that models the way that Christ is patient and loves us. And to me, it's like, I don't know how I would show Christ's pursuit of his church if I wasn't living that out. Like when I'm thinking about 4 daughters, you know, like I'm thinking all the time, like I've already made a mental note, like 6 months of dating in your home. I'm like, that is home.
Tell your daughters I'm sorry for that, but
no, we've just started talking about this because our oldest is 15.
Okay.
And so we've just started this conversation, and it was along those lines where it was like, hey, if you're going to date, that's got to be a boy who's comfortable enough to be here.
Yep.
Where they wouldn't feel like shame to be around us or feel like some sort of secrecy around it, and that they would feel like if I were to say something like, hey, we're going to pray before a meal, like, is that going to make them feel weird?
Yeah.
Like, are they somebody qualified to not have it all figured out, but to at least sit here under the understanding that, like, this is the foundation of what Lauren and I have, you know? And so in my mind, it's always in the back of my head, the first example my kids are seeing of how Christ loves the church is how I love their mother, you know? And the funny thing about, what'd you say your kids were, 10 and soon to be 5?
7, going to be 8 in the fall.
Oh, I'm sorry. Your marriage, 10 years.
10, yeah, we'll be 10 years in June. My son is 7. He'll be 8 in September, and then my daughter will be 5 next month.
Right. So, I mean, like, here's the wild thing. Like, you guys are in a season that you're looking going, there's been a lot of change since 2020.
Yeah.
You know? And in their life, they're like, my whole life, mom and dad have known the Lord.
Yeah.
Been a part of a great church home. And it's like, that's just such a generational blessing.
Yeah.
Of how God is so faithful. I mean, I don't know. Like, I just think back, like, I had no idea. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I didn't know how young my parents actually were and what they were figuring out for the first time. To me, they were adults that had it already figured out, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my mother-in-law and father-in-law, I mean, my mother-in-law was 15 and my father-in-law was 18 when he went to the Marines. And then they were married like a couple years after that.
Just babies.
And so literally babies. And I remember, you know, in the younger, you know, starting to date and, you know, having the conversation of dating and inside the house. And, you know, we'd be like, you guys were younger than us.
Right.
You know, like, or the age gap was wider than we were, you know? And, you know, but it was, looking back, it's like they had it figured out. Like they knew, they knew what was going to build a good foundation, and maybe it wouldn't have worked. You know, Courtney was going to college. I was going. Now we were both local. You know, she went to St. Francis. She's a nurse, and then I went to Chicago State. I played golf, and so we were local. It wasn't like I was going away. I did go to SIU Carbondale for my first semester, and then came back.
Yeah.
You know, but.
Yeah, that's the longest drive in Illinois.
Yeah, like it could. Yeah, like it could have failed.
Yeah,
but with their ideas, like they were setting it up with a good foundation. Yeah, and then the rest was up to us.
When did you start to how quickly did you start to like respect or admire your father-in-law in that process of getting to know Courtney?
It was probably a few months in. Yeah. To be honest, it was fairly quick, and the reason why is actually probably a little bit different than the dating. It was that I sat with him, you know, 2-3 times a week, and he never pressed me on God. Like knew that I went on Sundays because that was the rule, but like never made me feel like I was less than because. Wow. I wasn't living out how, you know, he currently was. And so, like, for me, you grow up with a lot of people being resistant of the church because they feel like everybody is like, you got to go. And if you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. And what I would tell anybody who's like starting a journey like mine is like, there are more people who are silently praying for you to find God and want to welcome you with open arms than trying to push you to do something that you are not ready to do.
Right.
And I think like for me, like that was kind of my respect with him early was, you know, he respected me as I was, right. You know, and there wasn't a focus on, you know, hey, you got to do this. Like he knew the good qualities in me, you know, and knew, hey, I'm dropping everything on my Sundays and dating his daughter and, you know, playing board games in the kitchen and, you know, jokes on them though. I went to so many free movies and so many free dinners because anywhere they went, we went.
Right.
You know, so I'm like, well, yeah, if you're going to take me to see a movie, that's great. If you're going to take me out to dinner, that's great. You know, but for them, it was also, you know, I joke with my mother-in-law now about it and she's like, yeah, but it was also an opportunity to get to know you more. Right. Than just, hey, pick my daughter up. You guys go and do something for 3 or 4 hours and you drop her off and we see you for 5 minutes.
Right. When did you know that they loved you?
I would say, man, that's good. It was probably pretty early.
Yeah.
And they, you know, if, you know, next time you come to Coal City, I'll have you meet my mother-in-law.
Oh, I'd love to.
And
I had no idea she was going. I didn't know your mom or your mother-in-law were coming.
Yeah. She's just one of the best women you'll ever meet in your entire life.
Yeah.
You know, and has so much love and cares for people so much. And, you know, Bob, he was the same way. You know, you would never think it because he, you know, he's this ex-Marine and
right.
You know, but he was you know, just a ray of sunshine wherever he went, you know, and welcomed people and helped people to no ends. And, you know, you always hear the story like, oh, you give the shirt off his back. Like Bob literally would,
you know,
and so I think when they I would say probably at the end of that 6 months, because I think once that 6 months was up and they were like, all right, like Courtney can now go to your house in Braidwood. She can drive there.
Yeah.
You know, and I think at that point they loved me because they were trusting their daughter
Right.
to go
It's
spend
pretty
time
huge.
with me outside of their house. And
Right.
I think that was probably the time, probably about 6 months in.
Did you go the traditional route? I mean, you guys dated a long time.
Yeah,
Did you go the traditional route and ask?
I did.
Ask him.
Yeah. So funny enough, he was an operator for ExxonMobil,
Uh-huh.
retired ExxonMobil, I think 36 years. So I knew I wanted to marry Courtney. I was asking her. He was on turnaround. So I know there's a lot of listeners that are, you know, in
Used to
that line of
schedule.
work.
Yeah.
And so I'm like texting him. I'm like, hey, when are you going to be home? You know, I need to chat with you. And he's like, I like text him like 2 or 3 times. We're texting back and forth. And so he's like, would you just call me? So I call him and he's like, I already know what you're going to ask. He's like, you don't need to see me in person. You have my blessing.
Wow.
You know, and he's like, but if you want to see me in person, that's also fine. And, you know, so he's like, I'm actually on my way home. So I met him and then, you know, we kind of just chatted it over and he prayed over us. And
I love that.
so I proposed to Courtney February 13th of 2013, caught her off guard one day before Valentine's Day.
Yep. Smart.
Yeah. So she had just got done with, she had a clinical that day in nursing school. And then so we went to Pilcher Park and I had like told her I got a new camera and I was like, hey, I want to go take a bunch of pictures with the new camera. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. And then, yeah, I proposed to her. And then about 2.5 years later, we got married.
Got it.
But we didn't live together before we got married. You know, that wasn't,
Right.
we bought a house in Braidwood, but she still lived at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so June of 2015, we got married and been at it ever since.
Man, it's so special to hear like a legacy that Bob left.
Yeah.
And like what a privilege, hindsight, like how meaningful those moments are.
Yeah.
Like of getting to spend time with you, getting to pour into you, getting to pray over you.
Yeah.
Like I like as a dad, like I just don't want to miss those moments that are a turning point. Like I want to pray over you.
Yeah. It's frustrating now, I think more than ever, because with all of his wisdom and everything that he knew, I didn't ask more questions.
You just think you got,
You know,
the next
like,
30 years.
yeah, you know, so it's like, I think that's where my focus, like with my kids, is like raise them in the church, let them watch their father be a man of God and their mother and live out the way that he wants us to live. And hopefully they ask me all those questions and I can pass down some of the knowledge. I mean, Bob he made like a full binder that would probably take you 2 years to go through of different readings and topics that you could talk about in small groups. Like he created it all. And
When did he do that?
he did it like, I think he started it right after his diagnosis and finished it a little bit before. But for a while, like even like, Scott Zorn
Yeah.
had it, you know, and was like going through it and was just like,
Yeah. Pastor
How
over at
can-
First Christian.
yeah, like how can somebody, because they became very good friends. That's where Bob and Beth started going once they moved from New Lenox, was over to First Christian.
Got it.
And then they became very good friends. And he was like, I don't know how somebody can accumulate this much knowledge. And I'm just like, he knows, he's read every book by every author, and like to the point where, you know, it was early on that we started going to the Village and Courtney and Mike were talking, and Courtney brought up an author and Mike's like, how do you know
right.
about that? And like
And
she
if
gave
Mike says
and
that-
she gave like Mike books to read. Like
Right.
this was my dad's book. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so
If you get Mike caught off guard, like you were actually,
yeah, like how do you know
like that guy's so bright.
like how do you know that? Like why in like in a good way, but like why are you reading that book?
Yeah.
You know, but it was just, he had everything that you can possibly think of. So I think that's what frustrated me, like when, you know, his diagnosis. But I also think that would I be sitting where I am right now if it wasn't for that?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would.
Right. Yeah, it's this great capitalist, and I'm just so grateful when I listen from the outside in. The thing that gets me is like just how interwoven these things are. I mean, like we didn't even know Mike and Kristen till 10 months before you did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like it felt like signing up to do a massive part of life together, and you just see like what Bob's been praying for, what your mother-in-law has been praying for, what your wife's been praying for, and then God plants you in your town with a church with great people like Mike and Kristen who live it out, who open their home, who they just everything is through the lens of ministry for them. And all of a sudden it's like this is the gospel. Like all of a sudden this thing that was a component of my life, like I believe in God, I like the idea of heaven, now becomes like the lens that everything gets like just the language you use is not 1 year, 2 year follower of Christ language. Like I want to be a man of God that my kids can see, that they ask questions, that they, like what a legacy to get to be a part of.
Yeah. No, it's been special, and I think, it shaped our entire life, and my wife now is the, she leads like the baking team at Coal City. So like if you're a newcomer to Coal City campus, chances are my kids and my wife are going to drop cookies off to you that she made. I'm part of the leadership team within the Coal City campus with a few others. I'm the usher coach. It's things that like I could not have even imagined even 3 years ago. Like couldn't imagine where I would be, and just absolutely having fun, loving every second of it, and such good people in Coal City campus, but all the campuses. I mean, having the opportunity to listen to this podcast and learn about people who I don't see on a Sunday basis, but Patrick Ugolini and his wife, I listened to the episode, I believe the coffee shop is now open. But when that was going on, it was like closing stretch. It's like 40 days they're trying to open, and just learning about their journey, is special. And then, you've got Carter who's fallen in the footsteps and, and that's special to see just because you look at the type of man Nate is, and you're like, wow, if you can live out like 10% of what he is, like you're going to be doing pretty good in life, and, it's really cool. And I think funny enough, I think one of the things that interested us a lot about the Village was the fact that, you have some of the traveling pastors that come and speak different, like being able to hear Rochelle speak and Nate speak and, Jeremiah, he's come in a few times, so like it's really cool just to get a different glimpse and like peek behind the lens of like what, other campuses are also seeing when they come and speak. And, it's really, I think you can see God's work being lived out within the Village very, very clearly, and it, the place that, Nate had a vision for, and then, we've only, been coming for a little over 2 years, but, you talk to some of the people who have been there from when they were coming here, you got J Mike, you've got Devin and Jason, you've got, Amy, you've got all these people who have kind of, transplanted around.
Gleixners,
and it's just, it's so special to see. And, I think, not to toot your guys' horns, but I think it's something that you guys should be very proud of because there's it's needed right now, and I think the Village is doing a really good job of just captivating people and growing the family. So,
well, thanks for that. If you were like closing thoughts to the listener, to the guy who's got a tea time on Sunday morning,
I think my biggest thing would be just show up. Show up with an open mind. I think that when you have a preconceived idea of what something is, it can typically steer you away without you actually living it. And so I would say just show up, and then just get involved. I think that I've said this before, but that everyone serves, know, and I think that there's a way, my wife uses the term like, it fills her glass.
Yeah.
And like helping people naturally, I think, fills everyone's glass.
Yeah.
Whether you want to admit it or not. I think that when you are able to help somebody, whether it's time in Kid Village or it's, a food pantry or, it's giving in general, like I think that makes everybody feel good. And so I think that if you can find a way to find something that you like to do, like I love talking to people. So
yeah,
Usher is perfect for me.
Yeah.
Like it's not something that I shy away from, but there's, maybe you're somebody who's like, I don't really care about that, but soundboard maybe sounds really cool, or working the computer and the slides sounds really cool. Or, there's so many different things that you can do. I don't think that everybody needs to jump right in day one, because I think that can be overwhelming as you're trying to find out where you want to be in your walk with Christ. But I think that ultimately, if you can find a group of people, like we're not meant to do this alone.
Right.
So I think finding a group of people who you can talk to,
yeah.
It's awesome for me. Like I have a lot of really good conversations with Tyler. He's my best friend.
Yeah.
They go to First Christian. Like we
Right.
don't go to the same church, and that's okay. Yeah. we can have conversations about, what we're learning about, like what the teaching are, what the segment that we're in right now. I've got some friends that live out of state now. We do our friend group. We have typically once a year, we'll do about a 10-week virtual small group.
Really?
Yeah. So like we have friends from all over the place that jump on it, and we use Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and we jump on, and
that is so cool.
We'll do typically right now media, and we'll pick out one that we like, and we'll go through it, and we'll meet on a Wednesday every couple of weeks, and honestly, it's more so just an opportunity to see each other. Like I've got a friend that was living down in Tennessee, now he's over in North Carolina, but it's an opportunity to see him, his wife, and his kids. They jump on, and we talk about what we learned,
right?
And then just talk about life in general. So I think just understanding that there's always going to be a group of people who are there with open arms to have that conversation with and learn more about, I think is just important. So I know there's a lot of people that are in my position that are like, I don't know where to start. First thing is just open the door and walk in.
I love that.
That's my biggest piece of advice.
I love that. Hey, can I put you on the spot? Have you pray us out?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
God, we thank you for this day. I thank you for Nick and giving us the opportunity to sit on this platform and just share your message and how we can work through people. I thank you for the Village. I ask that you continue to bless them with all the knowledge so that they can share that for new guests of the church or people who have been here for 20 years. We ask that you continue to look over everybody in good health. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. Hey, if you're looking for a good church home and you need an usher to help you find your spot and get welcomed, go check out our Coal City campus. We can't stress it enough. That place is just electric right now, and the stuff that they're doing. An Easter service of, I think, something like 450 people,
Yeah.
Kyle. Like, so your hands are full.
It was packed. It was awesome. Everybody was excited. Took a lot of pictures, had some baptisms.
Yeah,
which
incredible.
which was amazing to see. So
yeah,
we'd love to have you.
Incredible. So if you're looking for a good church home, go check us out there at Coal City. You can come here at Minooka. You can find us in Shorewood at the Trinity School, Seneca, Illinois, or join us online. So find your place here. We'd love for you to be part of the church body, and we think you could be living another great story just like Kyle. So until next time, we'll see you on another great story.
Thank you so much for joining us for another great story. Make sure to click that subscribe button so you never miss our latest stories. And if you are in the market for a great church home, check us out at thevillagechristianchurch.com. We've got more great stories ahead, and we can't wait for you to hear them all. So until next time, keep living another great story.